What's up, everybody? Welcome into this Saturday edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast. I hope you're all having a phenomenal weekend. My name is Andy Herman. You can always follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Got a couple news and notes and main Packers topic that I want to discuss and go over today. And my main topic is going to be breaking down Packers-Bears, but maybe not in the way that you would expect. And I don't mean this to be a fear porn edition and being worried about the Chicago Bears or anything like that, but and I should start by saying I expect the Green Bay Packers to win this game, and there's a good chance that they win it relatively easily. But this Bears game is giving me more, reason for pause than maybe I would have expected, and I think maybe than more people are actually discussing. I think a lot of people just expect the Bears to kind of roll into Lambeau. Green Bay will take care of business. The Bears' offense is abysmal. It's Mitch Trubisky, and that's that. And Packers win easily. And that, like I said, that very, very well could be the case. Let's hope that's the case. And ultimately, that could probably be the final nail in the Mitch Trubisky, Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace coffin, and likely the end of this current regime of the Chicago Bears. However, I do have, as I'm kind of alluding to here, some trepidation about this game. So let me start by going over some of my main concerns and why I think this could be, I hate the term trap game, but why this could maybe be a little bit of a trap game. Let me start by going over the Packers game last week against the Indianapolis Colts. And I'm not breaking down X's and O's here, but I'm going over how many plays that they had this last game, specifically on defense against the Colts. The Packers played 85 snaps on defense this last game, and not a lot of their top players, the Jair Alexanders, the Zadarius Smiths, Christian Kirksey, Kenny Clark, a lot of those main players were on the field for a huge chunk of that time. So 85 snaps is a lot. When you're looking at a normal game, it's usually somewhere between about 120 to 130 snaps total in a game. The Packers alone on defense had 85, which is a very, very high number. And I'm very attuned to this because I'm aware of how many plays that I need to grade each and every week, and 85 was a little bit daunting this week. So 85 snaps for the Packers defense is a lot. And it's even more when you have a very tough and physical game that ultimately, you lose and the emotion that goes into the game, and it's on the road. All of that can be draining. And this isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison by any stretch of the imagination, but I go back to that Packers-Vikings game a few years back now in which they tied. It was the Clay Matthews roughing the passer penalty. I know everyone loves reimagining this game, but the Packers had secured the interception, would have won the game. The awful roughing the passer penalty gets it into overtime. Minnesota blows like a million chances in overtime. The Packers blow their chances, and it ends up being a tie game. A ton of snaps played in that game. And while that game was in the hot sun at Lambeau Field, and it was like high 80s in September in Lambeau, and it's not complete apples to apples, you go back to that game. The very next week, the Packers were playing in Washington and the Vikings were playing the Bills. Both the Vikings and Packers were heavy favorites in both of those games. And if memory serves, I know the Vikings got crushed by the Bills, and I think the Packers lost by 2 touchdowns. If not, I think it was at least double digits in that game. Both of them were upset. And you could just tell both of them were completely drained from that game the week before. And again, the heat and the humidity and the sun and playing a ton in overtime. Remember, the Colts had 3 snaps on offense in overtime. The Packers had 2 snaps on offense, in overtime. Wasn't exactly the same. But when you come off a game like that can be a little bit emotionally draining, you can have a little bit of a letdown in the next week. And that in and of itself probably wouldn't have made me give much cause for concern. But when you couple that with the fact that the Bears are coming off of a bye week and they have extra rest, now the juxtaposition between the two makes this a lot more interesting. You have a well-rested Chicago Bears team that had its first real rest since the opening of the season, and the Green Bay Packers coming off a very tough, very physical loss, played in overtime, 85 snaps on defense, not exactly fresh. Their bye week was a long time ago. There is a difference there, and I think it's worth really noting in this game that you have a very fresh Chicago Bears team versus maybe a little bit worn down Green Bay Packers team. I think that's something that's really worth mentioning and monitoring as we go into this game, Packers-Bears Sunday night at Lambeau Field. Another really key thing here, especially with the the Packers losing last week to Indianapolis, the Bears are 2 games out of the NFC North right now, and they have 2 games left against the Packers. And that, it may not seem like much because the Bears have been so bad, but think of this from Matt Nagy's standpoint. If Matt Nagy's going into this game, the Packers win last week, they're 3 games behind. It's a really tough message to say, you know what, let's go in, get a win this week and let's see what happens. But to be able to say that you beat the Green Bay Packers this week and you're a game out of first place in the NFC North and you still have them later in the year in the last game of the season, there's a legitimate message to be told there to say you win this game and you're a game out of first place in the NFC North. That is huge. And when you're talking about messaging and trying to get a team that's been really struggling lately, motivated, coming off of a bye week, those are powerful words, and it's a powerful message to say, hey, everything's still in front of us. And don't forget that Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace, Mitch Trubisky, and a lot of people within this Bears organization, basically the entire coaching staff on both sides, all of their jobs very well could be on the line in this game. This Bears game means a lot more to the Chicago Bears than it probably does to the Green Bay Packers. And it's not to say that it doesn't matter to the Packers. It obviously does, as they want to continue to try to win the NFC North, clinch a playoff spot, hopefully, and potentially get a number 1 seed in the playoffs. But the messaging here for the Bears is very powerful. Everything is on the line for them, and desperation causes some crazy things. And I guarantee you, Matt Nagy and a lot of these people in Chicago, they're not ready to just fold over and say, you know what, we're ready and on to the next thing. And again, the fact that they can message it and say, hey, you win this game, you're a game out of first in the North, and not that you would say this, but not everyone needs to get fired and let go and cut in a complete rebuild. That's something that's there for Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears team, and I'm really interested to see if they come out with a little bit of extra motivation and really kind of use that to their advantage. I think the other thing that's worth noting here, yes, Green Bay's offense, one of the best offenses in football. And the Chicago Bears, if the New York Jets weren't playing this year, would be easily the worst offense in football. They're saved by the Jets in this season, and I think the Jets are probably just a tad bit worse, although neither of them are anything to write home about, and you could probably make an argument either way. But the Bears defense is better than the Packers defense. I'm not shocking anyone or breaking any news here. And the Bears special teams is better than the Packers special teams. Cordell Patterson is a major weapon. They've been much better on field goals this year. Pat O'Donnell's a solid punter. J.K. Scott's having massive problems right now. The Bears have the advantage in 2 of the 3 phases in this game, both on defense and in special teams. And the one advantage that the Packers have is on offense. And yes, that advantage is huge. And like I said, I still expect Green Bay to win this game. But it's worth noting that if your team has 2 of the 3 phases where you're either better or significantly better than the other team, it shouldn't just be written off as, well, this game's, an easy game. Like, they, by far and away, have a puncher's chance in this game. Then you kind of go back to some recent performances. The Packers' 2 most recent performances at Lambeau Field, not exactly inspiring. The loss to the Vikings, a game against the Jaguars that they easily could have lost, losing in the 4th quarter. If you think that the Bears can't hang with the Packers at Lambeau, but the Jaguars could, I still think the Bears are a step up from the Jaguars. Maybe not by as much as their record would indicate, but I still think that the Bears are better than the Jaguars, and the Jaguars were right there in the 4th quarter. Green Bay needs to come ready to play, and I get some of the weather conditions and the wind in those 2 games were not ideal. It limited the Packers' effectiveness on offense from a passing standpoint, but still, those are teams, especially defensively, that the Jaguars and Vikings did a really good job against the Packers offense, and the Bears defense better than either of them. And I think that's going to definitely be something worth monitoring as well. Also, you can't really make predictions based on what's not happened, so I don't want to give too much credence to this, but Matt LaFleur has never lost 2 games in a row as head coach of the Packers, and this very well could be the only time that this has a chance to happen even this season, because there's just not many tough games left on their schedule. So is he really going to go 2 years in a row without losing 2 games in a row? It's possible. And again, I'm not predicting the Bears just because of some random statistic, but you got to feel like at some point the Packers are going to lose 2 games in a row. And it seems like maybe, again, if all the lottery numbers hit for the Bears, maybe this could be the time that Green Bay actually loses 2 games in a row and faces some actual adversity for the first time under Matt LaFleur. There's another thing that's kind of interesting to me in this game in favor of the Bears. Frankly, and this may sound weird, I think Mitch Trubisky is better than Nick Foles for this Bears team. And I think he's going to actually give them some energy. I just don't think Matt Nagy and Nick Foles ever really mixed. I think Nick Foles wanted things done his way. I think Matt Nagy wanted things done his way. You could legitimately see them butting heads at time. It didn't meld. It didn't work. And I think, for all of Mitch Trubisky's faults, which there's plenty of them, he ran Matt Nagy's offense the way that Matt Nagy wanted. He's more agile, he's more mobile, and I think maybe that little extra juice could help the Bears in this game as well. Turnovers is another thing. 6 turnovers in the last 2 games for the Packers. Now you're going against a team that, again, very good defensively, very good on special teams. That's where those turnovers would come, and the Bears are very good in that regard. So it's all of these little things that when I look at the whole picture, I'm a little bit nervous about. As I mentioned, this isn't meant to be fear porn. It's not meant to be, look the hell out, the Bears are coming to town. I think Green Bay wins this game, and I think there's still a chance that they win it relatively easily. But there are a couple of tea leaves here worth reading to say, let's pump the brakes just a little bit and let's see what kind of happens, because I think this could be a lot tougher game. It's a primetime game, NFC North. Anything can happen in the division. This rivalry is an intense rivalry, and in these type of games, anything can and will happen. And nothing would shock me in this game, even though, like I said, I'm predicting the Packers to win. So I don't mean this again to be doom and gloom. There's a lot to be excited about the Packers, and hopefully they're able to come out and just stomp the Bears. And I think a lot of people may be rolling their eyes at me on this one and saying, listen, Andy, it's still Trubisky and the Bears. They might be without starting tackle Charles Leno. They might be without their starting defensive tackle Akeem Hicks. And if that's the case, it really puts the Bears behind the 8 ball in this game. So those are definitely things worth monitoring as well. But just wanted to bring a couple of these things up because, I think it's worth noting as Green Bay goes into this, relatively big game, Sunday Night Football against the Chicago Bears in a key divisional matchup. A couple other really quick notes. MVS did, in fact, not practice on Friday. I'll give my final injury update on tomorrow's show as I also give my 3 keys to the game. But mostly because I want to see if the Packers pick up anyone from their practice squad, change any injury designations, things like that. But I'll go over that tomorrow. But certainly noteworthy that MVS did not practice on Friday. Devontae Adams seems completely good to go, is off the injury report once again, so that's really great news. And then Kenny Stills cut by the Houston Texans. I know a lot of people asking today whether that would be a good pickup for Green Bay. Certainly think it would. It'll be interesting to see if he gets claimed. He's due a little bit over $2 million, and depending on how protocols would work, you might get him for 4, maybe 5 games of the regular season. So that's a lot to spend for kind of a backup wide receiver that would have to acclimate to the offense. I think there's a good chance that he goes unclaimed throughout the league. Who knows? The Chiefs will probably claim him, and because of course. But I think there's a decent chance he goes unclaimed, and then if so, Green Bay bringing him in for a visit and trying to pick him up would be great. I think that would be a really smart signing, especially if MVS has any sort of serious injury that could knock him out for 3-4 weeks or something like that. You would be basically able to go in and plug and play that same role that MVS was playing to a large extent. So definitely think that could make some sense. That's going to do it for me. Have to prep the Packs What She Said podcast shirt, prop it, I should say. Maggie and Perry do such a phenomenal job each and every week on Packs What She Said. If you haven't checked it out, make sure to do so. Appreciating the shirt, looks fantastic. You can also get them at SheSaidTV.com if you're interested in getting a shirt. Make sure to check out the Pack-A-Day podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Jake, Mark, and Paul are going to be covering today's episode, so make sure to check that out. And that's going to do it for me. Until next time, Jason, Mark, and Paul, not Jake, Mark, and Paul. My apologies. Jason, Mark, and Paul are going to have that for you. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.